Hi viewers, welcome back. Media Track, this is episode 4 and with me as usual is Devika Sequeira. Today we are starting with the main story that Devika will be telling us about.
Yeah, it's been a huge week and there have been massive developments in the country. So you can see from all the papers I'm holding that the story has hogged the headlines and the political narrative is about Kashmir and the abrogation of Article 370. So we have these headlines that say it all. In the Times of India, the main headline is rewriting both history and geography of Jammu and Kashmir, and it talks about Kashmir is now Union's territory, implying of course that Kashmir is now with the center. Two union territories have been created, one Jammu and Kashmir and the other one is Ladakh. Ladakh was part of Jammu and Kashmir earlier, but what has happened actually is that Jammu and Kashmir have gone in the reverse gear from statehood. They've gone back to becoming a union territory.
Yeah, because normally it's the other way around, no?
Exactly.
Normally for Goa and all
they
that in
have
87.
in a sense been demoted, if you can say. And now in Times talks about centre scraps Article 370, moves to bifurcate Jammu and Kashmir into two union territories. Herald says centre as revoking special status to Jammu and Kashmir. But there are many other headlines that go on with it. Times of India is also asking, triple talaq, 370, full stop, which says both these have been achieved, and will uniform civil code be next? So it also talks about the Congress being caught off guard. And
but actually they came out with a pretty strong statement after that, no? Sometime later.
Yeah, but there was
some gap.
There was a split in the party.
Yeah,
some
true.
people actually supported it, some were against, and the party wasn't talking in one voice. But I also like the way it's being interpreted. And somebody said the man who lit the fuse 70 years ago has now got his dream. So the main person was Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, who's really a big hero for the BJP and the RSS. He was the one who had objected right in the beginning.
There's a lot of interpretation and debate over how history has played out, and different points of view on who said what and who did what and who's misinterpreting. And
exactly. So BJP turns further right, signals India's hard power is another this. But in all this, a lot of the Jammu and Kashmir people don't know what is going on at all. All communications have been cut off. They're not entitled to the internet. They have not been able to speak on their mobiles, and they're not getting newspapers.
Landlines as well, no?
Exactly. And Mehbooba Mufti and Omar Abdullah are under house arrest, and their own families haven't been able to get in touch with them. Now, a
few reports are just beginning to trickle out through BBC and
some. There's been a lot of analysis, and already there's been reactions, obviously from Pakistan, who has recalled the Indian ambassador, and Pakistan expels Indian envoy, and there's been some requests from India that don't take this kind of an extreme step. So, but the issue also played out in the state assembly, and you had the government side obviously completely supporting it. But Luisín Falero asked a question, and he said, now that they've taken away these rights, how they've reversed statehood for Jammu and Kashmir, could this happen to Goa as well? And will they take away our right and merge us with Maharashtra? So that was, and then you had people actually making fun of the whole thing, which I thought was in really bad taste. You had Michael Lobo saying, now, I'm going to go and buy land in Kashmir and invite everybody, all of you there. So, for the Kashmiris, this has been a really hard step to take. But I would urge viewers of this program to look at the story look at the analysis that came out in the Indian Express on that day. It's done by the academic Pratap Banu Mehta. He
I read that.
Yeah, you must have read it. The story of Indian democracy written in blood and betrayal. And he says the BJP thinks it is going to Indianize Kashmir. Instead, we will see potentially the Kashmirization of India. And
there's a big debate. I mean, these are two clashing perspectives of how do you deal with differences within the country, you know, and you take this road or that road, and the consequences can be quite long term and quite.
I also want
negative.
to draw the viewers' attention to an interview of Ramchandra Guha in the NDTV, and the clip of that will be played for you. He talks about what happened in Kashmir can happen in your state too, and he talks of this, you know, sort of excessive use of state power to get something through. I think it deserves to be heard.
This is not an issue about Kashmir alone. It's not an issue about alienation alone. I'd like every viewer, every Indian to reflect on the arbitrary misuse of state power. An entire population of 12 million is shut out from a decision that is supposed to be in their interest.
Right.
What happened in Kashmir today could happen in your state tomorrow, unless you are vigilant and protect the constitution.
Devika, one of the arguments that came up against this action were that it's not only Kashmir which has special status, but it's actually 10 or 11 states which have.
Yes, Himachal Pradesh is one of them.
And they kept mentioning Goa in that, but they spoke about 371I, if I'm not mistaken, 371I. But when I checked in 371I, it just says that, you know, whatever the constitution says, Goa will have not less than 30-seat assembly. That was in those union territory days. So I don't know what exactly they were mentioning.
We've been asking for special status. I don't know for what reason they've been wanting special status, because they can implement their own laws if they want. They can pass a law in the state assembly saying people cannot buy land. Himachal Pradesh has done it if that is their intent. And the Chief Minister has even said yesterday in the assembly that we don't need special status. We've been given everything by the centre.
In Goa, the special status debate is quite complex, and you know, it's almost a joke, because different people mean different things by by special status.
Yes.
So for some politicians, it's only a question of you know, maybe getting more grants or something like that. So you know, everyone has a different conception of what they mean by special status when they talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. What would you like to talk about?
Basically, I mean, the other thing that has been deluging us the full week, not in a new sense and in the actual sense, is also the rains. Now, I was talking to some motorcycle pilots outside. I asked them, have you seen any time in your life, they are like me in our 50s, have you seen such heavy, such bad rains? And like unanimously in half a second they said no. We've never seen rains which are so bad. Of course, the flooding is a related issue that may be partly man-made because, you know, of the drainages and the blockings and the permissions and the buildings. But the rain, there is no doubt that, you know, this is act of nature, act of God, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it is getting worse, it is getting serious. Only once in 1987, when we were in college, in the university, finishing our second year, were the rain so heavy.
Yeah.
And that was also not the kind of violence with which the winds are lashing us every time.
That's true.
At the start of the monsoons, at the end of the monsoons, we are used to it, but not so much.
I know. Today we're at we are in August, and we are getting this heavy, you know, sort of thunder which you normally see only when the rains are approaching. This is
signing out.
Exactly.
Probably.
But there's been a lot of anger also about the way the infrastructure has just collapsed, you know, especially in Panjim. The whole new bridge was completely inundated.
The entry or exit point, yeah, whatever.
And exit points. Below the bridge, a whole tree fell on a car. So they've left this work so completely haphazardly undone and half done. People are very angry. There was a photograph going around of the the PDA planning department being so completely flooded
half
that
underwater,
people,
no?
Yeah,
the first ground floor.
People couldn't go to work there.
Yeah.
So it's obvious that something has gone very wrong with the way the infrastructure in the city is being handled.
Yeah. No, and on this point, you know, see, one is that we can continue to look at it as weather disturbances or the inconvenience to life. But at a wider level, I wonder if we have to seriously think of, weather change, global warming.
Yeah.
Because the fact is that the monsoons are getting more severe. Goa being affected by the monsoons It's a monsoon driven state, and like last year it was Kerala. The kind of images that we saw in Kerala, we could not imagine.
Yeah.
In Goa it's not been that bad. Fortunately we've had spells where the water drains out, but Panjim and all, you can't have a state capital which is like running on these lines, in that sense.
Completely true. And in fact, it drew quite a few comments, and one opinion writer in the Navin Times, Nankumar Kamath, even said that Panjim is the new Venice of Asiatic monsoons.
Very sarcastically.
Sarcastically, he went on about how everything is because of the wrong planning, the buildings are on sandy alluvial strata, etc., etc., and the collapse will happen at some point of time.
I came across this weather warning. I would agree that to some extent the weather predictions have improved, but not sufficiently, not as much as we need them to. When we were studying in Europe for a short while, we used to joke and say that if they tell you that at 12 noon it's going to rain, you can set your watch by the rain.
Okay, so why is their weather prediction far more accurate than
That's
others?
the $1 million question. That is a good question.
Because we are supposed to have as much technology, and we are supposed to be very good at technology. So why is their weather prediction?
I remember reading in the papers years back that some equipment which was brought in was from China, so they couldn't implement it because of some government ban, and also that is part of the issue. It's maybe like political, bureaucratic, but when you get the weather reports, they have, in some ways, sometimes they give you a good warning, but sometimes the warnings are so vast. Like, say for example, there was a All India severe weather warning report, and they've named half the country is going to be inundated by it. Even see the kind of issues that come out reflect in policy making. The Chief Minister declared a holiday on that was on Wednesday. And ironically enough,
that was the day it stopped raining.
It stopped raining. So in that sense,
That's
if
true.
Politicians are going to make good decisions, they need good input. So I
Exactly.
think
Yes,
bureaucrats and officials
absolutely.
have to be held accountable.
Yeah.
And there are some other images of weather disturbances and things like that, which one story.
A lot of people had to be rescued in places like Ponda and all
Yeah.
that. I mean, it was waist deep, the water.
Yeah. And we don't have that issue of dams so far. It has affected a few, but not so many, and our dams are a little bit remote. Of course, it is affecting those people there. Supposing a dam overflows and you need to release the water, then you're causing flooding in the neighboring.
But what I liked is one particular photograph. It was of the local baker, the Poder, cycling in the worst of the weather, cycling through so much water just to deliver bread.
In Divar.
Yes, I know. We will upload that photograph.
Marius has taken that photograph. Marius Fernandez.
So it was a marvelous photograph. It just showed that,
In fact, today with citizens' cameras all over the place, and every smartphone has these excellent abilities to click photos, I think that citizen reporting or citizen journalism is actually coming of age. Because we can actually look and report on these events. One other very interesting story regarding the rains was this one about it actually came out in the last week. I missed mentioning it, so I thought it's so good I have to bring it back. It's by Nida Syed, and she talks about the flooding in the Fontanes Mala area. So there is this family that every year has to move out of the area because of flooding. And the point she's raising, it's not unique to that area. The roads keep on getting tarred.
Higher
every year.
than their entrance, and
At some point it grows higher than your entrance.
That's true.
So then your house becomes a drain. And in the book on Bandra, a recent book on Bandra called The House at 43 Hill Road, written by one of our authors, Brenda, who was interviewed on on another program. She makes exactly the same point. So the flooding became so high that they had to move out of their house and sell it. And so I think all these are connected issues. We should look at it as a wider trend, not just temporary inconvenience.
That's true. Other issue that's been playing out endlessly, and the taxi strike, of course. It's been going on for a whole week, and now the government has tried to break the strike by taking the yellow and black cabs to their side, and some 900 of them or something have promised the government that they'd be back on the road. But the cabbies are saying that, and the government has said that they would cancel their licenses if they don't come back on the road. But the cab drivers have said that we will ourselves surrender our licenses. There are 26 to 27,000 of them registered. So they've still stood their ground, and now their demand is that they want the Goa Miles app scrapped altogether, but they're saying scrap it at least for 3 months and we'll see about negotiating. Earlier it was scrap it altogether and we will come to the negotiation. Now they're saying scrap it at least for 3 months. And one interesting part of this is Goa Miles claims the app, it's called ride hailing app service or whatever. Goa Miles is claiming that it has already 1,600 taxis enrolled with them. And I was just listening to this interview with one of their managers or something, and he said that another 250 have come on board in the last few days since the strike has started. But
it's a real complex issue.
It is a complex issue, and the taxi drivers are saying they feel that they were given this contract not in a transparent manner, no tenders were called for, so they want it to be. But I don't know, it just, now we just have to see who's going to blink first, the government or the taxi drivers.
See, when you mentioned that there are 26 to 27,000, it obviously seems, and that's the impression also you get from a rough perspective, street view of it, that we have overextended the number of vehicles in the state.
That's a huge problem, and who is to blame for it? I mean, you just let the thing grow endlessly. It's like how the tourism industry has just grown so without any rules or anything.
Because it's not that many tourists come regularly to Goa. No? There are peak seasons. So maybe in the peak season you need that many tourists. What happens in the rest of the year? We see them not actually,
Apart from that, people have come from outside the state and got into the tourism business, and obviously there are some even in the taxi business. I know 2 people, one from Delhi, who was operating 9 taxis here. I know a person from Bangalore who was running these cars and for adventure tourism, etc. So whatever the government might argue, there are a lot of people from outside who are in the taxi business, and that's something they have to look at seriously.
So then also the question that comes up, what about the small player? What benefit does he get from it? So if you're a small player, how do you take advantage of this so-called tourism boom? Whether there's any space for you, see, because it's also information driven, no? If they don't have the possibility of getting return fares or having a more efficient way of getting information and prepaid taxis or whatever, it's not going to work. Some efforts have been made, but I think it's too little in that sense. So anyway, what next, Devika?
So everybody's favorite story, the casinos floating in the Manduvi. Now there's a new angle, and it came up in the assembly. That was Wednesday assembly session, and the Chief Minister suddenly came with this announcement that Goans will not be permitted in the casinos. It's an old thing. I mean,
I thought it was already implemented.
Yeah, it was, but it has never been implemented. Now they're talking about implementing it again. But interestingly, the demand came from the MLA of Panjim, and then the Chief Minister said yes, he gave him an assurance that we will see. But also there is this figure here where he talks of how many Goans are employed in the casino. So he said that 564 Goans work in the casinos and 877 are from outside Goa in the 6 offshore casinos and 8 onshore casinos. So earlier demanding a ban, Churchill Alamau said Singapore has banned locals and we should do the same, and Babush Monserrat said in Macau locals are not allowed. It was a thing that was supposed to be implemented in Goa as well, but somehow, just like the Gaming Commission that never came into being, that is also what's the new thing in the casino industry. My favorite story of this past week, a local story, is about these in the Navin Times. It talks about this little village in Marle, which is in Kotegaon Wildlife Sanctuary, and they've been they didn't go and vote in the Lok Sabha poll in 2019 because they were on a protest. They don't have a road. They've not had a road for all these years, and so they have to walk 5 kilometers to get to the nearest bus stand, their students have to walk 5 kilometers, and that's where the bus comes. So they had this demand, and then they boycotted the election, and I think some election officer went there and requested them, don't do this, you know, your demand will be granted, but as it is, it's still you know, hanging fire with the government. And this is in Kankorn again. The local MLA is the deputy speaker.
Very
Isidore
interesting,
Fernandes.
interesting story, and I think we need a lot of rural reporting also of these types now.
Yeah.
I was just tracking the social media, which I like to spend a lot of time on, more time than is good to me, I think. And one was this thing of football matches. I think you know, they're talking about screening the British league matches there. So like Chelsea and Manchester United and all, they're already announcing the matches starting somewhere at this weekend or middle of August. Another small thing that came my way was, of course, you know, reports in the social media of the taxi strike and how some customers of even luxury 7-star hotels were being ferried out in auto rickshaws, goods rickshaws and things like that, you know.
Yeah.
So all kinds of, yeah.
One interesting case that came up in the assembly, in fact, the study shows that there are on an average 2 cancer cases detected every day in Goa. And this has come out because Goa Department of Oncology has become functional, and they have detected 1,038 new cases in just 290 days. So there was
We didn't have an oncology department.
I think it was not functional.
Not functional in GMC.
Probably, yeah. So there was a lot of debate on this, and the you know, Health Minister Vishwajit Rane was asked what's he going to do about it, and he said that they were going to try and sort of come up with some kind of deal agreement with Tata Memorial, so patients from Goa could be treated there. But it's a very, very high incidence.
It's a serious issue because
Yeah,
you don't,
exactly.
one is you don't know why it's happening. Also, you don't know whether these, you know, figures, people who want to dismiss them would say earlier we didn't know that so many cases were there because we didn't detect it.
Yeah.
But it could be that there is a rise, because even Karwar was talking about a recent rise and things like that. No, there were reports in the papers about Karwar being
I
surprised.
think this whole issue of detection is really the factor here, that we were not actually having that kind of, you know, equipment and all to detect this. Now that we have, more people are going for tests, and so the cancer cases are
No, that is valid, but on the other hand, you know, for the first time you're hearing people who are suffering from it. Earlier, okay, even if someone was detected too late, they would have been speaking about it, but we never heard so many cases.
Yes, there are, and younger people. They say it's lifestyle disease, you
Yeah,
know,
that's
stress
true.
and
That's
a
true.
lot of things like that.
It's just like your poverty-related illnesses may be slightly declining, whereas the lifestyle-related ones are actually, I don't know.
True. Yeah.
One or two issues that struck me, you know, on the positive news side, I got this from the goanvoice.org.uk. Of course, it was reported in the local papers first, in Herald also. I think Sammy Tavares, who's this police officer,
Yes,
is
that's
taking
right.
his tiyat.
That's right.
He's taking his tiyat to the west and all. So they
Yeah,
spend a
yeah.
lot of time, I mean, and energy and work.
Yeah.
Although being a senior police officer,
Yeah.
he actually has got a creative side to him,
Yeah.
which is very interesting
I've
and
done
unusual.
a story on him some years ago, and I asked him how does he manage, because it's not easy, you know, to put up a theatre. And he told me that his brother was his biggest sponsor.
I see.
And his brother used to work in the Gulf, at least at that point when I
I
talked
see.
to him and I did a story on him. And he said the whole family was very, very involved with theatre and acting, including his father and everything.
At the end of the day, it's a determination to do it that, you know, takes you there. It's not so much. One or two other stories that, you know, give us a positive glimpse. There's this one on Dean De Cruz, which talks about his role at reusing all waste material in building homes.
Okay.
So there's this detailed story, I think it's in Good News India, that looks at his role, and it talks about the homes he's built, photos of the homes he's built.
Okay.
And sometimes we miss out on the good news, and we miss out on, you know, don't give space to big features, big space to features which are alternative away from it. Also, last thing is that this lady called Maria Victor, who runs this group called Make It Happen, another big feature on her, where they talk about how this woman is creating creating an image of another side of Goa. So she's actually building these alternative tours after working in some corporate job. She's in her early 30s,
Okay.
and she worked in some corporate job, given that up, and she's actually run this tour service called Make It Happen.
Okay.
So just for the record.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yes,
Something
the assembly recently passed took a decision to amend Section 66 of the Factories Act and allow women to work the night shift. They said, equal opportunity, this, that, and the other. But Rane brought up this very interesting point, which I think is extremely valid because it came up, when we were much younger and we were working in a newspaper, and why don't women do the night shift? There were a lot of men saying that you want equal opportunity, equal jobs, equal pay. You should also do the night shift. The point is of safety. And right enough, Navin Times has an interesting editorial on it, and he says that there is no infrastructure in Goa to support women employees who want to work the night shifts. And it also asks this question, is women will not work night shifts without a safe and conducive environment, and there's also the sort of concern that they might be actually exploited, paid less and be made to work the night shift. So unless this infrastructure is in place, I also think
it may cost a bit more, but it's worth putting it
exactly.
in. No? I mean, in that sense, because
definitely.
people
Women
need to be
should
safe.
Women should be provided transport at night. You can't
Transport,
just
dormitories, safe dormitories, or
exactly,
transport or whatever,
exactly.
no?
Yeah.
That day.
Yeah. The other small little item I wanted to bring up is that the good news for OCI card holders, and government is moving to amend the civil code so that that is overseas citizens of India can get married in Goa, and they don't have to wait for a month. They want to bring the stay period down from a month to 15 days. So that's also on the card.
Yeah.
And also one other small news item which is quite interesting, I thought.
Yeah.
The Chief Minister has rejected the demand to allot housing plots for MLAs. It was a request made by the oldest MLA in the House, Pratap Singh Rane. He said, MLAs are getting late coming to assembly, it's raining so much, and it was shot down immediately. Thankfully, I must say, because everybody here knows, how well off MLAs are. I mean, they can afford to buy their own flat, or not like, Sweden and all, where they're paid so little, and the public doesn't like them to be given so many perks and etc. And the Chief Minister said they can consider providing a hostel facility for the MLAs on the outskirts of Porvorim.
Makes sense, no? Because the MLAs would be there for a short term.
Not only that, he says, forget about plots for MLAs. The government doesn't have land to execute its own projects to house government departments. So mercifully, that demand was shot down. So what would you like to take up next?
I think we are almost out of time, and the thunder is also bringing us back to our second point about the weather.
Yeah.
So we would like to end up here, also telling all our viewers to drive safely, be careful at this season. Thank you so much, and see you in a week's time from now.